In the summer of 2021, the world watched in horror as a young woman, whose dream was to travel across America, vanished into thin air. Gabby Petito, a 22-year-old woman from Blue Point, New York, seemed to be living the dream, embarking on a cross-country road trip with her Brian Laundrie. What was supposed to be an adventure of a lifetime turned into a nightmare? In this episode, we will explore the shocking case of Gabby Petito, her disappearance, the search that followed, and the heartbreaking aftermath. This is a case that captivated the world, sparked widespread media coverage, and raised questions about domestic violence, the investigation process, and the lasting impact on those left behind. Gabby Petito was a bright, adventurous young woman who had always dreamed of traveling. Her social media pages were filled with photos and videos of her travels, inspiring many with her sense of freedom and wonder. She shared her journey on platforms like Instagram and YouTube, giving the world a glimpse into her life as she explored nature, documented her adventures, and created a brand around the nomadic lifestyle she loved. In July of 2021, Gabby and her 23-year-old Brian Laundrie set off on a road trip in a converted van. They were heading west, hoping to see the beauty of the United States and document it for their growing YouTube channel. Gabby posted regularly on social media, sharing photos from the Grand Teton National Park and other iconic American landmarks. But as the days passed, Gabby's social media posts began to stop. She was last heard from on August 30th, 2021. Her family started to get worried when they hadn't heard from her in several days. What seemed like a simple travel delay soon took a darker turn. Gabby's family knew something was wrong. Her last post on Instagram, featuring a photo of her van with the caption "Happy Halloween," was unlike any of her previous posts. It lacked her usual energy, and her family found it unsettling. On September 1st, Brian Laundrie returned to his home in Florida, alone without Gabby. He arrived in the van that had been part of their trip, but Gabby was nowhere to be found. At first, no one knew what had happened. Brian Laundrie was not speaking to the authorities, and Gabby's family, who lived in New York, grew frantic. Gabby's mother, Nicole Schmidt, attempted to contact her daughter, but there was no response. Gabby's family began calling the police, and on September 11th, after nearly 2 weeks of silence, Gabby was officially reported missing. The case quickly gained national attention, with Gabby's family pleading for information and for the public's help in finding her. The FBI, along with local authorities, launched an investigation. But it was not just the authorities who were working on the case. The public became heavily invested in the story, with social media platforms buzzing with theories, updates, and support for Gabby's family. At the time, Gabby's disappearance was making headlines around the world. But it wasn't just the mystery of her disappearance that had people talking. It was the involvement of her Brian Laundrie. By all appearances, the two had been in a loving relationship. Their social media presence painted the picture of a couple embarking on a dream adventure. However, as the investigation unfolded, there were disturbing signs that painted a very different picture. In Mitogast, just weeks before Gabby's disappearance, a 911 call came in from a witness who reported an incident involving the couple. The caller described a possible altercation between Brian and Gabby near a grocery store in Moab, Utah. The police responded to the scene, and the body cam footage of that encounter would later be released to the public. It showed Gabby visibly upset, crying and shaking, as she explained to officers that Brian had been arguing with her. In the body cam footage, Brian appeared calm, almost detached. He explained that they had been arguing for several days, but he denied any physical violence. The officers, however, did not arrest either party and decided that a mental health crisis had occurred. They separated the couple for the night, and the situation seemed to calm. But it was clear there were signs of an unhealthy relationship. And these signs were now being examined under a new, darker lens. Gabby's disappearance turned into a nationwide search. The authorities focused their efforts on tracing her last known whereabouts, reviewing camera footage, and trying to piece together the timeline of her and Brian's journey. But as the days passed, the search for Gabby turned into a search for the truth, and the focus shifted squarely onto Brian Laundrie. Brian Laundrie, who had returned to his parents' home in Florida on September 1st, quickly became a person of interest. Gabby's family was desperate for answers. They called on Brian to tell them what happened to their daughter, but he remained silent, refusing to cooperate with authorities. Instead, he and his family issued no statements, leading many to believe that he knew more than he was letting on. On September 17th, after nearly 2 weeks of silence, Brian Laundrie's parents reported him missing. According to their account, Brian had gone on a hike in the nearby Carlton Reserve in Florida on September 13th and had not returned. Law enforcement began searching the reserve, but it wasn't until later that the public and investigators would realize that Brian was hiding in plain sight. As the search for Brian continued, the investigation into Gabby's disappearance took a shocking turn. On September 19th, 8 days after Brian's disappearance, the remains of a body were discovered in a remote area of Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. the same area Gabby had been last seen. The body was later confirmed to be Gabby Petito. Her death was ruled a homicide, and the details surrounding her final moments were still unclear. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma and strangulation causes of death. That suggested a violent and deliberate act. The tragic discovery confirmed what many feared the worst had happened to Gabby Petito. Now, with her body found, investigators turned their attention to Brian Laundrie and the ongoing search for him. As the case continued, investigators worked tirelessly to understand how Gabby's journey ended in tragedy. The nation was captivated by the story, following each new development closely. In October, the search for Brian Laundrie reached its climax when his remains were found in the same Carlton Reserve where he had allegedly gone hiking. In addition to his remains, authorities found a notebook where Brian allegedly confessed to killing Gabby. The revelations were haunting. Brian's death was ruled a suicide, but the questions surrounding Gabby's murder remained a part of a larger narrative. What had driven Brian to kill Gabby? Was there a history of abuse? Did anyone know the true extent of the violence that had been simmering between the two? Gabby Petito's case raised important questions about domestic violence and the patterns of control and manipulation that often occur in abusive relationships. While Gabby's life was tragically cut short, her story sparked a global conversation about the need to recognize the signs of abuse before it's too late. The disappearance and death of Gabby Petito was a devastating reminder of how fragile life can be and how domestic violence can go unnoticed until it spirals into tragedy. Her story left behind a wake of grief, unanswered questions, and a community left to mourn the bright young woman who will never get to finish her journey. Gabby's family and friends have found strength in honoring her memory. They have spoken out about the importance of recognizing the signs of abuse, advocating for the awareness of mental health, and calling for more comprehensive support for those in toxic and dangerous relationships. While the case of Gabby Petito has officially come to a close with the discovery of Brian Laundrie's remains, it's clear that her story will continue to resonate with millions. Gabby's dream was to explore the world, to experience life in all its beauty and wonder. But that dream was tragically interrupted. Her story reminds us that, no matter how far we think we are from danger, sometimes the threat is far closer than we realize. Thank you for listening to this heartbreaking chapter in true crime history. Gabby Petito's story is a painful one, but it's a story that needs to be told. Please join us next time for another case that will leave you reflecting on the fragility of life, love, and justice.